So I decided to do this out in one of the local parks today, get some fresh air. So you might hear some geese and ducks because there's a big pond right behind me. How is everyone today? Hey Tina. Been also studying up on Irish folk tales and lore. Magical creatures are indeed something to which we have to respect. Do not disregard warnings. Education is key. Thank you so much. You're very correct. Hey Sky, how you doing? So I wanted to talk a bit about manifest destiny. You know, the term used for extermination, and the annihilation of native culture, because that's what really occurred. Uh, and it started way before Andrew Jackson and his whole thing. The Indian Removal Act of 1838. It actually started with the conquistadors. They brought diseases here, way of living, and not wanting to understand nature. They don't work from the heart. None of these people did. Hey, Lauren. Hey, Taz. Sorry, my light meter is wigging a bit. Let's try this angle, see if that works a bit better. So, with the, yeah, with foreigners coming to the Americas, it brought a lot of destruction, and a lot of it was done intentionally. Uh, the Spaniards started enslaving natives as soon as they got here and tried to submit them, subdue them, etc. Threw away a lot of their historic documents. That's part of the reason why modern science doesn't believe we had any written language, because most of those documents were destroyed. Although some have popped up recently, thank goodness. Additionally, you also had the Franciscan monks that came in on the west coast. Uh, oh boy, especially down around Paso Robles area. What is it called? Mission San Miguel. Franciscan monks came in there and crucified natives that refused to take up Catholicism. They crucified men, women, and children. And it's in their church's logs. It's in that particular monastery's books. But, it's under glass now, so you can't look at it. But it used to be open to the public. Now you have to have written permission. But the documents are there. You know, what they told about what they did in order to convert. Oh boy, there goes some Canadian honkers. Hey Jason, how you doing? Oh, I'm doing pretty good. I hope that you are doing well, and I hope that your family is doing well, Jason. I've been praying for you. So part of what occurred, you already probably understand the removal of children from, the care of their adult family, native families, in order to send them to Christian schools, or, we call it reeducation schools, because they were forced to cut their hair. They were forced to leave their native name behind, and they were forced to leave their native lore and culture behind. The cutting of the hair was done to tell them they did not have any connection to the earth, which is why we grow our hair long, is so that, you know, we are natural, like the elements around us, like the place the Creator gave us, earth. It's our connection, it's our lifeline, so to speak. It's another reason why we have such particular care and respect for our hair. And in my tribe, when a relative passes, you cut your hair off. That's why I'm always having to regrow my hair. I'm the youngest of my family, so I'm always having to cut my hair. It's to let go of the past and to continue to walk forward. It's what it means in that instance. But otherwise, it's a separation. It's a forced separation from you and your culture. And that's actually how a lot of our lore was lost, is because children were separated. I know Native Americans today whose parents were still separated from, taken off the tribe and forced into schools that didn't teach them any native way. And that was up until the 50s. So imagine, 200 years basically of forced denial of your own culture. I think that's why a lot of the information about the Sabe and the other cryptids has been lost. It's because the lore has been destroyed. That's why it's so fragmented and why, we kind of have to piece things back together. And unfortunately, in some cases, we have to rely on the experts because we don't have any other choice. Sometimes that lore is so removed from our present mind that we have to rely on archaeologists for information, which is very disheartening when you think about it, because it means that we simply don't know anymore. And yes, even the information that I have is incredibly fragmented due to 5 generations of separation from the time it was, daily used as a way of living and interacting with the Sabe and avoiding, red bone people or Gugway or other dangerous cryptids. This is all trying to piece it back together, trying to bring a little bit of the past knowledge forward so that we can be aware of it now, and maybe we can learn to build on it again, and perhaps we can learn to reconnect with our world. Hey, Angela. I was taken away from my family when I was little. I still don't know my family's. My father's last name was Moose, but I was given the last name, yeah, Pemberton. But I have no Pemberton blood in me. That's very common, unfortunately. Uh, Lots of my relatives have had the same sort of thing, done to them, cousin families. And that's actually why Owaisa, my great 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 grandmother, went renegade. She refused to be put on a reservation. She refused to be separated from her knowledge. And she made that choice when she was 6 years old. She wasn't able to leave the reservation though until she was 16. She got married. She left, never returned, and preserved the knowledge. She taught her son the same knowledge, and he went on his turnout when he was 10 years old. And because of the situation in the home, uh, she told him, go learn to live like a native. Hello. I'm in the middle of a live. Thank you. Cute puppy, by the way. So she she taught everything that she could to her son, and then turned him out permanently. Told him to leave. Told him to go out in the world. Told him to preserve the knowledge, and he did. So her son became an adult at 10, like was normal for our people back 200 years ago. Once you learned to trap and once you learned to hunt, meant you could take care of yourself, meant that you could provide for a family, you were an adult. The rest of it was, just learning to, learning your place within your social structure. So many of my family that were cousins either intermarried with, you know, the invaders that and became colonized, or they held true to their knowledge as much as they could, and they avoided those circumstances as much as they could. So keep in mind, the answers, because I do not have all of the answers, but the few little bits and pieces are relevant enough that we can build on it. And I've had to, kind of do my own form of turnout after my grandmother, my native grandmother, passed early. My education wasn't completed, and she basically did the same thing to me. She said, go out in the world, go associate with the Sabe and learn for yourself. It's the only way you'll be able to know these things now, because I won't be able to teach you. So I think that is how a lot of our culture has been lost. And it's pitiful that that is the case, because, you know, what a foreigner thinks about your knowledge is completely different than what you may have understood originally as people. And I am very glad that I have a lot of natives who are enjoying my channel and my content. That is the main reason why I actually started this, was to give back what little knowledge I have to natives who are interested, because it's the only way we can revive our culture. You're okay, baby. I know you're gonna get bored. Come here. Hey, Angela. I'm a member of White Earth Nation in Minnesota, but I have not been there for several decades now. Oh, I'm glad you remember, and I hope that you can go back. Oh yeah, my native family has been that side has been incredibly strong, and incredibly diligent about keeping the few pieces of knowledge alive and passed from generation to generation. That's why, you know, I was taken up and down the West Coast so much, shown the old trading routes, shown old strongholds where Sabe lived, and where they keep their animals, because they keep their own animals, and some of those animals are quite unique. But, you know, they're hidden. A lot of natives actually, after the Indian Removal Act was put in place, a lot of tribes actually walked off, meaning they went out into the wilderness and didn't come back. Some of them went into cave systems. Some of them went into hidden ravines and box canyons and channels between mountains in order to stay away from, you know, the colonizers. And there are still quite a few of those tribes today, believe it or not. I know of at least one still in this area. My mother took me to see where their cave was, because they've been living in that particular cave for 150 years, 190 years now, something like that. And there's a city built up around where they live, but nobody ever sees them. They go out at night to forage. Some of them actually mingle with the people on the street in that bigger city. You know, they'll put on modern clothing and go forage in the city, meaning they're raiding your garbage cans. But still, they survive and they've retained their culture. And tribes like that, you know, that are human with no hair, you know, like us, they would have a great amount of traditional lore that they could share if we could contact them, if they wanted to be contacted. And that's the other question. Do some of these people want to be contacted, or do they just want to be left alone? I know that some of the Sabe are very interested in being recognized as human beings, because they see themselves as being human, because of their intellect. You know, the fact that they use tools, the fact that they tell stories, the fact that they have ceremonies in respect for the dead, respect for life. They want that to be shared. They want that to be common knowledge again. They want an understanding of them, so that people do not fear them. And they also want it known which ones are dangerous. Because quite often the dangerous species of cryptids out there are also dangerous to the Sabe, the Bigfoot people. So I think that is why some Sabe, you know, Bigfoot people will protect you and talk about you and warn to other groups that you're in an area, so they can protect you from things that are much more nasty than they are. So how to recapitulate it, you know, how to bring this knowledge back together. It's simply, you have to share it. It's the only way to make sense of it, because the more natives that can share the fragmented knowledge, the more likely we will be able to get back our knowledge and preserve our knowledge. Sorry, I'm a real nature freak. I like the little critters around me. It makes me feel more at home, to be honest. Hey, baby, you're okay. I know you're bored. Come here. So again, educate yourselves. I always go to museums, and I would love to be able to travel up and down the West Coast again, and take a long tour and show people what's out there. But that's going to take some time and some planning and some hope because I don't have much in the way of funding. I work full time and pay bills, and after that, I'm kind of dead broke. So it might be just a pipe dream, but I do have a few things coming my way. I am working on trying to get up to, well, do the little introductory piece with natives up in Canada. I've got to arrange a Zoom call for that and some time off work so I can do that night. And then, I'm also working on getting this channel completely up and running correctly so that I can monetize it. I have an RV package, resort package lined up, something I've already paid for. I just need a vehicle with a camper back on it so I can retire in a secondary form of income so that I can do what I want to do, which is actually continue to share the knowledge and show exactly the places that I have learned these different things at, and potentially show you some more structures and other sorts of things, tools, whatnot, of different people in different locations, different Sabe in different locations. I figure that's the only way to bring the knowledge forward is to teach it like I was taught, take you to the areas I was taken to and show you the things I was shown and, tell the stories about them that I was told. Uh, that is the easiest way to learn is by example. And it's much easier when you can see the example in front of you, like a clay pot or a native dig hole where you make a fire, smokeless fire. Uh, Otherwise, it's very difficult to describe those sorts of things if you don't have a point of reference. Because if you're unfamiliar with what the what those things are, then you're not going to understand how they're applied or why they were useful. And the other is talking about the way that the Sabe live. They live very indigenously, meaning that they use markers, and that's part of what I've been trying to show. And they do have hereditary markers that go with them. And each family usually will have a marker or a stone of some sort set in a boundary position. Very much like the ancient Greco-Roman sort of concept of, stele stones between boundaries. They have a similar mindset, it seems. Baby girl, you're okay. You're not gonna die. It's okay. Come here. Come here. So part of what I'm trying to do is show you how they live, what they do to live, tools that they use so you understand uh, what they what they use them for. Trying to show you a little bit about the religion and the perspectives that they have on life. They have a very indigenous practice that way. They communicate with each other, they interact through trade with each other, and they maintain a very moral life in a lot of ways. They don't practice a lot of things that you might think that they do. They aren't animalistic, they don't eat each other, they aren't cannibals, they don't practice black magic, they don't they don't do that sort of thing. They actually have a very strong moral set of values, and they are very endearing towards their children. They always teach their children from a very young age. Their children are always interacted with and protected by an elder sibling or an adult parent. And that is an ongoing process until they become an adult and, achieve their adult name at 8, at which point, or 10 in some areas, at which point they are then, allowed to marry if they want. And, the only time they would marry before that is if, you know, their family's been wiped out and they're the only survivor, or they, uh, disease has taken them, or fire or flood, that sort of thing. And then those young ones are still, you know, put through the process of being an adult. They're still taught. They're still kind of tested to make sure that they know how to build a trap, to make sure that they know how to hunt, to make sure that they know how to collect the correct kinds of edible food sources, uh, know how to use basic medicines, because they do use basic medicines. For instance, when Jen Jen was molested the first time by the Gugway and became pregnant, I went out to find her because I hadn't seen her for a couple of days, and I found her Mensa cord, and she had torn the cord in half, meaning no Mensa. She knew she was pregnant. And where I searched for her was around our spring, because that's where she would typically go. And there was water hemlock back in that area. And I was very aware of what water hemlock was and that it was poisonous. And when she discovered that she was pregnant by the Gugway, she ate hemlock. She ate hemlock until she shook, meaning she ate enough that it should have killed her. It was affecting her nervous system, but it made her abort. But then, he took her captive after that, allow her to abort another one of his offspring. But then he ended up beating her so bad one night she miscarried anyway. And that was the second little offspring that I was able to examine. The one that looked like a dog man. They didn't look anything like her or the Gugway, which looked very human. So, thinking about how they live. They live without tools for the most part. Tools are reserved for special needs and in particular groups. Some of the groups don't use a whole lot of tools, like the Oma, the Jen Jen. She used a few little stone tools, but she never chipped them. And she used a few little wooden tools, but she never sharpened them because of her beliefs, not to harm. In a lot of ways, her practices were far more Buddhistic than Native American. And she always hand collected her food. She did not cause it pain. She would break the animal's neck before she ate it, that sort of thing. She would use her infrasound to knock the little animal out so that it wouldn't know what was going on. And she would pray for the animal. I guess you would call that a grace, but she actually prayed for the animal not to be a food animal the next time. She prayed for it to be born in a higher form. So there are also those aspects to the cultures that are out there. And that's another reason why I believe they're uncontacted Indigenous people, because of the belief systems that they have. Whereas her husband, Guanche, was very tribal and very much like Native American tribal system. He also had certain elements within his culture, the Deer Society, for instance, where they practiced higopla. Uh, you know, the deer is sacred and you cannot take it without it offering its life to you. And that is another thing that is unknown to most Caucasian people about natives. When we hunt, we do not hunt the way other people hunt. We wait for the animal to come. We wait for the animal to expose itself, to present its heart, so we have a clean shot. And it's seen as the animal is gifting us with its life, and that is why we don't just take. We allow the animal to come to us. It takes a lot of patience to do that, but it is a respectful way of taking life in order to sustain life. It has to be a gift. It cannot be a robbery, because that's the other side of it, is you're robbing that creature of its life, and it's not giving itself willingly to you. So those are a few little cultural differences that set natives apart from the Caucasian world that we live in currently. And it is very much a Caucasian world that we live in, and we still, we still get hunted on our own reservations by people who don't like us. And we still get told that we have dirty skin when we bathe every day. And those are just slights and slants meant to, degrade us. It's silly. So if you guys got any questions, please feel free. Otherwise, I'm going to probably answer a few more questions that I've seen over this past week. Have some patience, baby. I'm sorry. So one of the questions I got earlier this week that I was unable to answer because for some reason the thread is broken and I cannot answer this particular individual's question. And it was about what the wasting disease is. I know what my trapper father said it was, and I know what Native Americans believe the wasting disease is. It's an infestation of ticks that turns into an open wound that then becomes infected with MRSA. Now, MRSA lives in the ground dormant, which is one of the reasons why it was known 100 years ago, do not stick any knife that you intend to use to prepare food or dress a wound with or do anything with in the ground. The reason is many things die on this earth, many things rot away on this earth, and if you stick your knife in the ground, you'll end up putting MRSA bacteria on your knife. You're always supposed to utilize a knife on a clean surface. Even natives practice this. We'd lay down a hide, or we'd lay down some sort of berry or piece of bark, anything to keep even our glass knives out of the ground, because we understood it caused infections that we could not cure. So potentially, that is what the wasting disease is an extreme case of infection that's untreated. And that's why the animal will literally fall apart and still be walking around. And we knew of this disease hundreds of years ago and where it came from. That's why we had the practice that we had. Don't cut meat on your lap. Don't uh, don't stick your blade in the ground. That was all to prevent, disease from carrying through and from infesting you. So that is a potential. I mean, there could be other answers. But that's the old lore that I have about it, and that's what I understand about it. Could be wrong. I don't know if science has actually figured that out yet. I know that you can have deer meat tested for the wasting disease, but I haven't gone through that process. I don't know exactly what the test kit is looking for, if it's looking for MRSA or something else. But, it could be another dormant disease, because there are lots of dormant diseases in the ground, especially here in the Northwest, because of the nature of the kind of weather we have. It allows some things to stay in valley areas much longer and, kind of gestate in the ground. When you get up in the mountains where it freezes more, you don't have as much of that sort of thing in the ground. But in valleys you do, because they don't freeze enough to kill off certain diseases and bacteria. So that's a potential problem. Looks like you guys don't have too many questions today. So, uh, yeah, a lot of changes going on in this world today, and it'd be nice to see it change for the better, and it'd be nice to see a little bit of revival to ancient knowledge. And yes, some of the uh, some of the lore, it's hard to pin down the era that it's from. You know, you've got what is said from generation to generation, and then you've got, you know, archaeological, anthropological, geological information today that they were not aware of uh, to help try to pin some of the timelines down. But it's still going to be difficult because when you're dealing with two different ways of counting time, so to speak, you know, a modern way and an ancient way, sometimes it's a little too idealistic and a little difficult to be specific. So keep that in mind. You know, there's going to be some errors, there always is, but, you know, we are also discovering that lots of texts are older than we realized, lots of things here that we thought didn't exist, and we also now have a bit better way of, you know, looking for sites archaeologically. You know, we've got LiDAR and we have other equipment now where we can look underground, and potentially that will help us find a lot more, you know, Native American stuff as well as globally, you know, what was going on in more ancient times. And then trying to pin down timelines, you know, even with our modern technology, pinning down timelines is still quite a challenge, you know. Radiocarbon dating, it can be off by several thousand years to a couple of hundred years. Even modern strata, which is, you know, strata identification is a little better, um, but still, we're, you know, still struggling scientifically to pin down timelines. Actually, part of the stuff that was done in the South Pole, uh, you know, doing ice drilling to grab, you know, pollen layers to help us understand extinction events and help us understand what flourished on our planet during different time periods. That sort of thing is really helping us kind of pin down things. But you know, now we are also discovering, you know, Native Americans had inhabited this Northwest and North America and South America far longer than previously understood. I know, baby. We'll go for another longer walk. Come on up. Come on up. You want to be on? Come here. You want to be on the show? Okay. So, I think as we discover more and as we learn more about our history timelines, that's going to help us a lot understand how old our cultures really are. But you also have to realize, you know, if the ground lay uh, wasn't appropriate, if there wasn't enough mineral, for instance, in the ground for something to be preserved, it's going to have rotted away. You know, anything that's soft material like leather or cloth or wood, that stuff all goes away in a few hundred years. It rots away in very short order if it's on top of the ground. And, you know, it's only preserved if it's in a moss bed, peat moss, you know, or some sort of mineral bed that allows it to harden up and mineralize. So we don't have a very good record overall. And then, you know, we've got a lot of stuff that's just been thrown in drawers and hidden and not thought about. So we've got a ton of stuff. We just haven't been managing bones correctly, you know. And now we're getting to a point where we've assumed that we know everything from the little bits and pieces that we've pieced together already, and we've written our history books that way. And now it's a bigger challenge to actually go back through some of that material and document it and bring it forward, because now you have the challenge of confronting what is already known. And really, we should maybe be thinking about just we're adding to what we already know. might actually lead us in a completely different direction, of understanding. Darwinism to a point is very accurate, but in some cases I think it's got a few errors. But that's simply because we haven't looked at everything yet. And, that will come with time. So I hope that the little chat today about how we lost stuff, you know, that, and you also have the culturization issue after. Once children came back to their elders, uh, re-educated, they typically would leave the reservation, they'd leave the elders behind, and they wouldn't take up a native way again. And then, they would be rejected in the normal culture, the civilized culture outside their native culture and their civilized natures. And they would be frowned upon, they would be rejected, and, typically they would lose their way, meaning they would become alcoholic or they would become a drug addict or etc. And, once they did go home, they were already lost people, already nursing the wrong wolf. So part of being able to maintain your history, I think, is being able to maintain yourself as a whole person and not let counterculture around you destroy your own concepts and your own understanding of your people. You have to hold tight to that, and you have to always work from the heart. Uh, you know, love sparingly, but love yourself well, and respect those around you. Even if they don't show you respect, extend respect. It might give them a clue as how to act, but only time will tell with that. It's a hope. So yes, there's been a lot of also interlacing, you know, with the adoption of Christian values, because Native values are actually very Christian when you come down to it. Uh, you know, it led to new practices, new belief systems within the Native culture, not as traditional, not as ancient, not necessarily bad, because the value system is good, but it has caused a big gap in knowledge, because those things that were considered biblical in nature, shall we say, cryptids being a biblical creature, brought fear to the minds of the native children, and now over the last couple hundred years, they've rejected that kind of knowledge, that kind of concept in a lot of ways. I mean, there are still native people inside the reservations that understand the Sabe, and they still share information. The elders and medicine people will share that sort of thing, but they keep it to themselves because they don't want to be seen as crazy, stupid, or any other negative connotation, because they hold true to their culture, which unfortunately is still something that happens to natives all of the time. When I talk about Bigfoot, everybody goes, "Oh, well, you're nuts." No, I'm just talking about what my ancestors understood. And again, that's why I'm trying to present the material that I have, uh, tracking information, the way that I'm trying to present it, as a way of learning what the behaviors are and why you see the things that you see, the snapsticks, the little tools, the unusual stones, the trail markers, Lakana and Kanji. Those are the things that, we can see and walk by and not recognize if we don't know what they are. But once you understand what they are, it starts to help you paint a picture of what these people might be doing and how they might be living and how they might be interacting with each other. Because they do very, very strongly hold together. They are they're very traditional, very indigenous, and they do not want to give up their lifestyle. They want to be known, but they don't necessarily want to modernize and become a taxpayer. They want to be known because they don't want to be hunted or killed unnecessarily, and they do not want negative connotations presented about them when you're talking about the other guy, you know, the red bone people. So that's part of the reason why some of them will communicate with you, and some of them will be very open to you. And having some way of interacting with them will definitely, in my opinion, bring more to light. And on that note, if you guys haven't checked out Thinker Thunker's channel, he has a new piece up, a new sound recording, and so he's got some really good work, and he's got a good library of recorded sounds of. He believes they're all Bigfoot sounds. My ear tells me different. He's got at least 3 or 4 different kinds of cryptids in recording. But until people are able to identify different sounds as 2 species, that kind of mistake is going to continue on simply because there is no point of reference. You know, how can you tell the difference between a dogman howl and a Bigfoot howl? Well, unless you've been out there and that particular call firsthand, it's going to be very difficult to distinguish. Other than there are some key sounds within uh, both of those howls that will let you know. One's a little more lyrical sounding, and that one is the dogman's howl. They sound a little more like they're singing instead of screaming. Uh, but, you know, to an untrained ear, it's going to sound the same. And then there are some other cryptids that he has sound recordings of that are neither dogman nor sabe of any kind. They're another critter. But more on that when I have gotten my channel up and monetized. So yes, I will continue to work on this, and yes, you can contact me through my P.O. box, and yes, my email is still up and working without a problem. So please feel free to contact me in any way. And if you feel like supporting my endeavors to get on the road and utilize my RV package in order to continue more research, I would appreciate that. Otherwise, I will just work my tuchus off till I get there, which is going to take a while, probably another 2 years before I'll get everything set up the way I want. And yes, I will be continuing to work on the current van, though it's a piece of junk running down the road. I'm going to do a sound studio in the back of it, pad it up so that I can at least capture external sounds without too much bounce in the pattern. That way maybe we can get a little more interactions out in some of the woodsy areas, and hopefully bring a little more language forward or communication forms forward, you know, knocking and whistles and that sort of thing, so that you guys can understand a little better about how they communicate and why they communicate. You know, usually it's a need that they're communicating about. They want something. They need food. They need fire. They need something. And if you have a friendly ear and you're able to understand you know, what they're saying in the kana or what they're knocking out in request, and you know how to answer them, then you'll be able to, you know, gain a little bit of interaction with them. And I'm going to start setting up a playlist of kanas. So you're going to have a new playlist, and it will be of specific kana, not just communication, but kana. And it will be, you know, what I find in the field, followed by a translation. Uh, you know, a second video pertinent to the first. So that will be, you know, kana and kanji playlist. Hopefully that will help people be able to communicate a little bit on their own. And please feel free to send me pictures of kana and kanji that you find. I would love to be able to create a lexicon, kind of a dictionary, in order to facilitate communication. I think that that would be the easiest way for us to actually communicate since, it is a known language, or actually several groups of known languages to be exact. And, it is translatable with modern technology. So again, if you are interested in the kana and kanji, the easiest way to translate them is to use Google Lens app, and you transfer the pattern, onto paper, and then scan it. Use your camera, scan it to translate, and you're trying to detect, Chinese language, Japanese language are the best ones to start with because those seem to be the most prevalent between most of the groups. And pinyin, but the translator doesn't really handle pinyin, but with standard Chinese you can get to pinyin because a lot of the elements are still the same. And if a repository of knowledge like that can be built and proofed, then it'll be much easier once some scientific work is actually done on the discovery of these beings. That it could be facilitated. We could use it to communicate. And on the idea of discovery, if you can get yourselves the same kind of DNA testing kits that the parks districts use, water sampling kits that look for trace DNA, ground sampling kits that look for trace DNA. Now, I've looked into a kit like that. It's $1,200 for 100 test kits, but that includes the lab work. And you can test for unknown species that way, which is what the parks districts utilize it for too. It's so that they can track, how many fish are in an area or what kinds of fish are in an area to be more exact. They still have to do hand counts on number. And, other little things like how many salamanders are in an area, or, if they've got any bullheaded freshwater eels in the area. Then they'll be able to trace DNA test for that. And I think trace DNA testing soil and water might be the easiest way to prove an unknown species is out there, because you're not looking for a specific thing at that point. You're looking for an unknown. And with an unknown, then you can retest that same sample to delineate what kind of species it's related to. Is it related to a human? Is it related to a primate? Is it related to a canine? Is it related to something else? And if you come up with unknown canine or unknown human or unknown ape, then you have some actual demographics on species type. And that can also be built on at that point. That would be another piece of equipment I would love to be able to afford, is the DNA testing kits like that, because I know where there are bed systems where I can just go in and scoop up soil, and I know somebody's been sleeping in that spot the night before, for instance, and I know how to do DNA collection. I had to isolate when I was working on our ranch. I had to isolate elements from a body in order to be shipped to a lab. So, you always use your gloves, you always work on a clean mat, you always make sure that you don't corrupt your containment unit. And if the sample needs to be frozen, you pack it with dry ice. I'm very aware of how to do all of those things because I've had to do it for the first 10 years of my life growing up on the ranch, because we farmed mink and we had to track diseases and genetic drift in our herd. So it was very important that you got it right the first time, especially if you were dealing with some sort of genetic oddity with one of our animals. Like we had a mink that was born with no skin. He had an extra fat layer that his hair grew in, but we didn't realize that he didn't have a pelt, no skin, until we had already killed him to take his pelt. And his fur just pulled out of the fat layer instead of pelting out. There was nothing. So that particular body, the entire body, had to be preserved and sent to the lab for research. And it was found that the gene for skin had been counterflipped on the allele set for a third fat layer instead of a skin layer. So, genetic drift, anomalies like that is something that I'm very familiar with, and something to keep in mind when you're trying to do any kind of DNA testing on unknown species, especially unidentified ones that might have some very odd ancient genetics to them. See, we don't understand what the genetics, for instance, of any of the dinosaurs really were. I mean, we've got bones, and we have ideas of what they looked like. In some cases, we can't tell if they're, were warm-blooded, cold-blooded, whether they had scales, whether they had feathers. We just don't know. Whether they had hair, we don't know, because that soft tissue stuff didn't preserve, and the bones are so old we can't genetically test them. So, if we are dealing with a species or groups of species that have survived since, like, the end of the Younger Dryas period, and may have survived from extremely ancient times, what we understand in modern genetics may not be relevant to them. There's the potential, if what Uncle Ong was saying, that, we have a triplet uh, style ability to reproduce, that we can be male, female, or asexual, then, genetically that might be a little harder to pin down. And science might even today have some issues trying to explain that away or identify it, simply because we don't have any reference in our gene bank, so to speak. We don't. That might be the other, cause of why so many of the DNA samples that are taken of different cryptids and have been taken of different cryptids get tossed. You know, Science can't explain it. Oh, it must be tainted. Chuck it. Well, we've done that before. Turn of the century. You go into an old temple, you'd find a bone that didn't belong there because you knew the species was, somewhere else on the planet. So the archaeologists at the time had chucked that bone. Oh, well, it's not relevant, but it really was and really is. And it's that sort of disregardant nature that we need to keep in mind. I don't make any assumptions. I try not to. I, I do have my opinions, and I will tell you, they are my opinions. But when it comes down to it, you have to remain as neutral as possible when trying to examine anything like this. And the reason is, if you put your preconcepts on it, you're going to lose data. You're going to lose data because you're going to self-rule it out, which you really shouldn't do as, a researcher or a scientist. Your opinion and your value system, your understanding of the world needs to be put aside, and you have to look at the raw data neutrally. But we all are fault. We all have our own preconceived ideas. So that will sometimes hinder progress, unfortunately. So if there are any questions, please go ahead now, because I'm going to sign off a little early today. I think I've made my point. We've lost a lot of culture, and it's been mainly because of culture clash. You know, Native Americans don't view the world the same way as settlers. And even today, there is that difference. Natives keep to themselves, and settlers keep to themselves, and there's not a lot of commingling, so to speak, except at powwows, where you come be tourists to watch us dance. What we're doing is actually a religious reverence. It's a ceremony for the earth. That's what a powwow is about. But most people coming to view it don't understand that, and they don't realize that. Uh, but that's just a culture difference. I hope you've enjoyed today's little talk, and hope it's given you some information. And, Native Americans are still being killed on their own land today. Uh, Children and women go missing all the time, and, they're never seen again. So that, again, is destroying our ability to continue on as a culture. So, if you're not safe in public and you're not safe on the res, then you're, you know, still being hunted, you're still being exterminated, you're still being utilized as somebody else's profit margin, so to speak, especially if you consider that, some of the missing people off the tribal lands might have been trafficked, which is a good likelihood, especially since it's women and children that are going missing, uh, and young teen men. That, that to me all indicates human trafficking. So keep in mind, dying culture. We are actually a dying culture, whether we understand that or not. And it's because the genocide's never stopped. It's just taken on a new business form, unfortunately. So hopefully my sharing stuff isn't too late. And yes, I will keep doing as I've been doing. I'll show you the things that I'm aware of, and I will tell you the stories that I know. And if I don't know something, I'll tell you I don't know. Because like I said, I had to go out in the world and learn a lot of this myself after being given some introductory information, so to speak. And I'm hoping that you guys will, also do the same. Once you've been introduced to this, you will take it upon yourselves to, you know, go out in the world and seek out the truth, and know that you're going to have a wonderful life doing it. You're going to learn many new things, and some things may startle you, and some realizations you might go, oh my God, am I seeing what I really see? They really do build beds, they really do use tools, they really do use fire, they really do use pots, they really do, make things, they really have religion. They revere their dead. They set up memorials with stone hearts wherever they have a home ground, and the Sabe will place the stone hearts as an individual passes, be it a child or a parent or a loved one, next to them, a husband or a wife. So, a reverence for those that passed on is another cultural thing that we share with them. So, I hope that I haven't been too, I don't know, boisterous in my opinion. But I feel it, you know, we've got a good amount of technology where we can communicate internationally via podcasts, Zoom chats, etc. It's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity, a time where we can educate each other, a time where we don't have to rely on somebody else's books that may not have the truth in them. And we can educate each other. We can learn from each other. And I've learned a lot from many of my subscribers, actually. And I really appreciate some of the information that you guys have brought forward to me. It lets me know that some of the ancient stories, locations of different kinds of cryptids, they're still active in some of those areas. And my thought was they had died out. Some are good and some are bad, but to know, either way, to know uh, that certain hereditary stories still are valid today proves for me that the knowledge my family has handed down was true and accurate. Thank God, because I wouldn't want to be telling an untruth. I don't consider that a good thing. Always work from the heart, always keep truth in your mind, and always keep truth in your words. That's why the natives wear the bone necklace with the central round here, is to make the statement that you always speak the truth. Because if you do not speak the truth, then you are degrading history, and you're degrading yourself. Because with each lie, you have to tell another lie. With the truth, you only have to tell it once and then repeat it because, well, it's the truth. And it cannot be broken. It can only be disproven or proven. And I'm hoping with enough people looking into things in a similar way and understanding lore, we'll be able to dig the truth out of this and bring it forward. Because I think there are a lot of people that actually are very, very interested in cryptids, social structure. And like I said, they do live very indigenously. They live very much like Native Americans did at one point. They still utilize very, very ancient structure types. Stuff that my native grandmother spoke of during the Ice Age. We weren't living in tents. We weren't living in teepees. We were still making our homes out of mud and sticks. So, with that in mind, these indigenous Sabe people still live very much as if they are from a different time period, a far more ancient time period. And I doubt that's going to change because they prefer to live in balance with nature is how they feel about it. Meaning you don't take more than you need, you respect the things around you, you leave stuff in place, it's not yours. You don't take from each other. There's only giving to each other, always working from the heart. So, anything that comes out of the woods that's trying to scare you is either trying to protect their own and trying to drive you away, but they're potentially not harmful to you. If they're trying to chase you down and eat you, they're probably not a Sabe. They're probably one of the red bone people. And, you can put it into the terms of good versus bad, but I don't look at it that way. I look at it as the hunting nature and the characteristics of the particular indigenous family group of people that are there. So my dog is really whining. I better get going. Again, feel free to contact me. I try to answer my emails regularly, and I check my post box once a week. Other than that, I'll be probably doing another live next week. I'm not sure yet what it's going to be. It might be more on different kinds of species that I'm aware of. I've got to think about things. Or maybe it will be a more specific answer question kind of thing. Because there have been a few feeds that have been broken, I can't answer people. So maybe I will start doing a little bit on that. Alrighty guys, thank you very much for attending today. And I appreciate everybody. I'm so glad that you have an interest in my channel's topic. And I'm glad that you're hanging tough with me. I appreciate it. Take care everyone. Have a good day.